I was kind of like, where can you go? With the first Avengers, him becoming a team player, and with Iron Man 3, him transcending his dependency on the tech that's keeping him alive, I thought, okay, now what? But there's all this unfinished business. There's the matter of a certain wormhole that opened over New York and the imminent threat that still implies. So Tony has turned his attentions more toward a bit of a post-Reagan era Star Wars type notion. And he likes to call it Ultron. I love the love-hate. I love the people. This time around, I felt like I really got, honestly, a bunch closer with the cast members. And Joss and I are pals. Meanwhile, there's always that part of it that you never forget your first time. And from Iron Man 2 into Avengers and Iron Man 3, there's always this, I think it's like life. You're like, why isn't it like it was in college now, But more than any other of the Marvel movies since Iron Man 1, for me, I feel like this is really a kind of a feeling of an ending of an era and the beginning of another. Obviously, some of that is informed by the new blood coming through, with Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson. And I welcome it. Well, there's a lot of full circles going on. Probably the most personal one is James Spader playing Ultron. He was the first person I saw kind of off the boat when I got to LA and took me under his wing. He's just a couple years older. But I think, again, it was a very inspired casting choice, not just because he's on everyone's lips and minds again, for reasons obvious with this show, but also that he really is a bit of an American treasure, and I've certainly borrowed from his style more than a few times over the years. It's a global property, really, and I think it was the responsible thing to do is to branch out and do stuff. There's also something much more authentic about when there's not just a felt sense of somewhere, but, okay, they're there. I'm certainly glad it happened, and it seems like it's really adding to the overall scope of the thing. He's just really smart, and he thinks stuff through. I remember sometimes the joy of things was we were kind of creating things as we went along or within the context of the story. We were really figuring out, well, what frequency should this scene be? And Joss tends to already be a couple of steps along in that process, which occasionally can make you feel like, oh, well, what am I bringing? But there's always other steps that can go. And so it makes it easier to get to the best version of something because he's practically there already most of the time.
Shield has fallen since the last Captain America, so now we're all kind of relying on one another. There's really no one to report to, so it's kind of this loose hierarchy. They're kind of just leaning on one another as soldiers. There's no one person giving commands, but we're kind of operating as a true group now. He's trying to still figure out where he belongs. He's always been a soldier. He's always kind of fit in that format. He enjoys structure, and he enjoys having orders and a plan. And without that, he does feel a bit aimless. But he is still searching for whether or not he can have a life outside of being Captain America. He's been of service for so long, trying to figure out what he would do without his uniform and shield is a bit of a puzzle. With Joss, I mean, he's not just our director, he's our writer. So that level of involvement that he has with these characters and this material is incredibly beneficial. If you're struggling with a scene or with a line, he's not only phenomenal at coming up with things on the spot, very witty. He has wonderful banter and repartee, so he can always make adjustments. But he's a comic book fan, so one of the main demographics you're trying to please are the fanboys, and since he is one, it's a very safe exchange, knowing that anything he suggests will be met with approval. I thought it was great. I mean, they're a unit now, so it's not growing pains anymore. It's now just kind of internal conflict, trying to operate as a team as opposed to how to form one. I think he's certainly giving the orders, but it's not the type of hierarchy where he gives commands and people have to do it. This is purely in the sense of when battle breaks out and we need structure, Cap has no problem kind of organizing a team approach. In terms of how they behave when we're not fighting a foe, there still is, a loose chain of command. No one is technically in charge. But Cap certainly does lean towards the side of structure and, a hierarchy. So when they're on the battlefield, I think is when he feels most comfortable.
He's a central part of the team now. He's established, and there's certainly a unity that they've all formed now and is solid. Thor, I think, sees a bigger picture of the current conflict that's going on. There's the initial battle which they're involved in, but Thor sort of uses his Asgardian knowledge and starts to tap into some otherworldly possibilities and threats that he thinks are coming. I think in each film he has grown a greater affection for Earth and humans, than the first time we saw him when he was arrogant and what have you. So, yeah, this time around he definitely, his biggest concern is the well-being of this world, and he very much is sort of looking out further into the universe to make sure that threat doesn't consume, this world as well. It was one of the first times on any set where I had really no idea what that character was going to be and how that performance was going to be played out. And the first time James did it, it just all made sense, because the writing is very sort of, it's tricky, in his speech, and but the way he does it, everything has a sort of sarcasm and irony, yet highly intelligence, and it's a beautiful mix. And I remember the first time he came on set and did this big monologue for all of us, basically. We all just sort of applauded by the end of it and forgot our lines because we were captivated in what he was doing. Well, anytime you have a director who's also written the script, it's a huge benefit because they can articulate exactly what it is that their intentions were when they wrote that character, and so you have the source of that information right in front of you. But he's such a smart guy to be able to bring this many characters together and give them all a purpose and a focus, and then have this huge complicated story around it with tons of action, tons of humour, and also heart. That's the balance that a lot of these films miss, and he's a genius when it comes to kind of melding those things together. I think we've gone to far more locations than we have ever before, and kind of covered more ground, and so aesthetically it's just, it's going to be a mash-up of a whole lot of different locations and styles and images, and but everything has just been dialed up, and even the sort of complexity of the story has gone deeper, and we've seen all these characters evolve in their individual films, and now to see them come together the second time is, I think, is pretty exciting.
The most important, aspect of my job, as an actor that's been carrying this character through not only Avengers, but from Cap, and then also starting in Iron Man, is to keep a sort of steady kind of consistency with the character's arc, I think, and have the character's evolution be one that is sort of cohesive, and you know, you kind of want to feel like the character is growing, as opposed to just, you know, staying the same, making decisions based on the person that we know her to be from the films that we've seen her in, you know, and the time we've spent with her on screen. Where I think Natasha had a sort of a stealthier, or the Avengers in general had this kind of stealthy approach, and S.H.I.E.L.D. certainly had that. Now they're kind of, we're being judged in a different way. You know, everybody is watching us, and so you know, it's just a different playing field. I was also so thrilled with the casting of James Spader as Ultron. And I really, you know, I think it's so fitting because Ultron is everywhere and everything and has these, you know, almost Shakespearean soliloquies at times that are, you know, very theatrical. And I think in most actors' hands would probably be, you know, totally over the top and, you know, and impossible to juggle or make any sense out of. You know, you really have to own the you know, the phrasing and, you know, and also because this character is really psychotic, and you have to be able to kind of own the many faces of Ultron. I think the really exciting part for me anyway, you know, bringing Avengers to the table this time around is really that we all get our opportunities to delve deeper into the backstory of each one of these characters. And, you know, all of us, every one of the Avengers comes to the table with a lot of baggage. You know, we all, none of us really chose this job. It's kind of the job chose us. And, you know, that kind of reluctance to wear the superhero hat makes for very interesting backstories. And, you know, we have our sordid history, and we get to explore a little bit of that. I think the audience is going to absolutely love that.
That was really cool to be able to explore that human side, and that was my main attraction to doing Hawkeye in the first place, because he's a character that is human, and he's flawed, and has limitations. And to explore that humanity in him, the human side of him, instead of the superhero side of him, was really exciting for me. In this one, we're together a lot. Which is great for us, terrible for Joss, because it's tough to wrangle 10 crazy actors that love each other and just want to talk. It's like a kindergarten class. I mean, it's really, he literally has to whistle like to get our attention. He brings a lot of weight and a lot of character, a lot of humanity, and sort of 14-year-old boy temper tantrumish kind of thing that he brought to it, and his regalness that counterbalances that. It's really, really, really great to humanize something that's really not human. I think he's the man with the answers. He's the man with the plan. I try not to rock the boat. He's got it all figured out, and I trust that. The only thing I'll ever raise my hand to say is like if I can help make a stunt better or something else. I'm not going to help him. I'm going to help him tell a story. I'm not going to tell him how to tell his story. So I just ultimately just sort of follow what he needs. And all I know is if I get a smile on Joss's face coming out of that tent where he's watching, you know, job well done. I think everything that worked in the first movie is just exponentially better in this one. The relationships are not better in the sense they're just deeper. There's more to go. The bad guys, Again, not better, just different. Stunts are crazy. The hero shot, the spin on that's, you know, not that it's mimicked, but it's just different, and I think it's better. We're all learning and growing.
We covered a lot of ground of establishing who these guys were in the first one, so we were able to really dig down much deeper into who they are when they're relaxed, you know, when they're familiar with each other. That's when people really start to sparkle, and they let down their guards, they're vulnerable. A lot of it is I think, just his feeling of well-being within the group. You know, he's never quite felt so at home and part of a group before, and I think he really buys the idea that he has, like, made a leap. And especially the work that is happening with him and Black Widow, and this sort of taming of Hulk, and being able to use her as a partner in this. You know, I think they're experimenting with how the Hulk, how they control him, but I think mostly it's he's in a great place in his life, and because of that, he feels more able to join the world. With Joss, it starts at the writing, and the fact that each character sort of has their moment is a tip of the hat to him, because the story that he is telling, he knows it so well, and at the same time he knows the character so well that he knows when those two things should and must intersect, so that you get the perfect balance of character. You feel like you're being satisfied about who these people are, while at the same time pushing the story forward. I just think it's going to be a great ride. It just takes you to a lot of places, and each one of them is kind of visually pleasing and emotionally pleasing, but together they're epic.
There's a great communal friendship between us all, and we, you know, have great memories together of things that we've done. We're all like really good friends. We encourage each other. We support each other's careers. We know each other's families and lives off screen, whatever. So we talk about those various things and various aspects, and where we've seen each other and things that we've seen that each other have done over the period of time. And we have a nice fraternity of Marvelites, I guess. Josh has a great handle on what this genre is, how it works. He enjoys it as much as we do. He has a definite idea about how he wants things to go, and he has a plan. That's always good when you have a director who has a plan. And I think that he's as excited about the end result as we all are, and he will be just as excited about the movie and how people receive it as we are, and that's really great. Having watched the development of Robert's career, and knowing the kind of work that he does, and he's very prepared, and he's always spontaneous and interesting while you're on set. He keeps it fun. He keeps you on your toes, and he always gives you something to work with. And he's a great team player in that respect. He gives you your space, and it allows you to blossom in your moment. And he savors that and helps you along with it. It's good.
It was definitely a daunting kind of feeling to kind of come on set with all of the Avengers, with, because for the majority of the cast, they've, this is their sort of third or fourth film, so they're very comfortable with them, with the way that they want to portray their characters, and with each other, and you know what I mean. So it felt kind of daunting, but that was taken away pretty quickly when you meet the guys. Everyone's super friendly and down to earth, and it's very grounded kind of set. Quicksilver's been really fun to portray as a superhero. He's because not only do I sort of see his superpower being like as fast as the speed of sound, but like I feel like he's quick at everything. Like he's quick-tempered. He's so which means he's frustrated with everything because he's already there. Everyone goes so slow for him. It's like he's fast to react in everything. So it's been kind of fun to kind of play with his character. They can't do without each other, which is nice. And this is sort of a real sort of yin and yang kind of thing. Like I'm very kind of sort of fatherly and physical and protective over her, and she's some sort of that motherly kind of, nurturing and caring and more sort of emotional and thoughtful, and so they sort of balance each other out.
I asked Marvel to compile like a Bible of all comics, all of the issues that were like centered around her, and it's just unbelievable the amount of material she has to draw from. When I started, it was just Aaron Taylor Johnson and Jeremy Renner and I in Italy, and then all of a sudden everyone was added, or everyone else had been there, and I took a break and came back, and they were all there. And I was really intimidated that it was going to be a lot of like improvisational banter. So Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, basically, they're like vagabonds. They are kind of gypsies in Eastern Europe, and they have just had to use their own resources to get on. And the way we thought of Scarlet Witch's costume is that she would just grab things on the go, or he would maybe swipe things for her. They kind of just became an amalgamation of not like trying to put outfits together, but of just like using the resources they have. Joss from the first Avengers really gets to inherit characters from all the different franchises, but he got to create us. And I know he was really interested in also creating a female character that was strong, and like a different silhouette was important to him than everyone being in pants. And so it was fun to see our characters grow, because in the first script, it felt like we knew what the journey was and the arcs were, but it wasn't like full. It wasn't fully created yet. And then as Joss, I don't know if it was through conversation or just how this might just be his process, but we started to grow and expand and become increasingly more relevant, which was really cool to see.
For me, I loved coming into this story in the capacity with which this character does, because he has a knowledge of these characters because of how he is sort of self-created to a degree, with a lot of help from, or misintended help from Banner and Stark. He's got a sort of encyclopedic knowledge of them and their past and their history and their lives, and as he does, you know, a sort of general comprehensive history of mankind. I think his perception probably of the world as a Tony Stark is the absolute defining personification of what is wrong with the world today. And the Avengers as a whole, I think he looks upon as being reflective of what is the representation or the reflection of decline of civilization. Ultron becomes a self-created being, really, as he continues to advance and develop and evolve and so on. Our friendship was really based on one of the few friendships I've made working as an actor where our friendship was really based on our friendship away from the set. We worked together on a couple of pictures, but our friendship was based on a friendship away from that. And then we just have been on different ends of the universe for some time. And it has been one of the great pleasures of working on this picture has been finding that friendship again, which happened immediately. I was so excited about being able to be on a set with him. I like his writing. He was excited about the sort of eccentricities and idiosyncrasies of this character. Not just what's intimidating or what's, not just the aggression of this character, but also the insecurities and his problems, of which there are many. On the set, Joss then distills sort of this tremendous sense of the whole to just the tiniest things, and that is, to me, perfect in terms of the relationship between a director and an actor.
I'd sort of worked with Joss, you know, ages before, and you know, through an ISDN line, through just doing the voiceover for Jarvis, and we'd laughed so much, and you know, just over the phone, basically, just laughed, and that he managed to sort of AIM1 figure out some way to get me to be. You know, in the franchise as a real flesh and blood was just great. It was a great rollout for a new character and a really. I mean, it's a fantastic introduction for Vision and a great birth and for me, just personally, it's a nice sort of continuance of this thing, because I've kind of been involved in this whole thing right from the beginning. Well, I think he is the audience. I mean, you know, I think that I certainly have to relax into the fact that he knows the world. He is a fanboy, as well as the, you know, the director of you know, the biggest comic book franchise the world's ever seen. So he's both things. So he knows what is acceptable, where you can bend the rules, where you can make changes, and where you simply can't. We're not trying to save the world. We're trying to make a really enjoyable, fun, action movie, but it's really imaginative work. It's a lot, everybody's just having a ball with each other, and nobody's trying to be better than the other person. They're just trying to make the thing fantastic. There's a really nice bunch of lads and ladies, I gotta say.
It's so fun. I mean, it really is so fun. And because Joss is such an amazing writer, and he writes for characters, and he also writes interplay between characters so well, it's been really, really exciting to just be able to play out these long scenes and watch everybody and to react and to sort of play off of everybody within one scene. She's always in these circumstances. Like, that's the fun thing, getting to play Maria Hill as she progresses through these films. It's like, what phases her? Because I remember when we were shooting the first Avengers, and like New York was going down, it was like emotional, and Joss was like, this is like the end of the world, and this is like really affecting you, and then sort of things affecting her less and less as the movies go on, because she's just experienced these kind of horrifically tragic things in her life that she's kind of become a little bit more closed off emotionally, and probably handles herself better in the situation. He truly is Tony Stark. He truly is, like, he embodies him now. And I think in terms of this franchise, I mean, so much of it is because of him, and because that he like brought Iron Man to film, and just kind of made him so interesting, and he has his faults, but he's so charismatic. So he's just like an utter joy to watch. I think people will get to know the characters more, but they'll also get to see some special effects that haven't been done before. Meet some new characters, which are really fascinating and layered and interesting. And I think it'll just be another really great time at the theater.
It's great, and obviously everyone's a professional, and have been at this for several years now, and know their roles really well, and kind of knows who they are. So it is fun to sort of be the bigger group now, and figure out how we work together as a team with these new elements that are in there now, and how we're going to go forward to take on this new crazy baddie, Ultron. And I think it puts Rhodey in a tricky spot, like he always is, trying to bridge this relationship that he has between his service to the military and being a good friend in service to his friend, and also now larger in service to this team that's, all of their interests should be aligned, but they don't get to the goal in the same way. So I think that's what Rhodey is always trying to navigate. How do I stay, within the confines of, my military ranking, and do what I'm supposed to do, chain of command there, but also be a part of this team. James is great. He's obviously been doing it a long time, and is a really interesting actor. So I thought it was an interesting casting choice, and I'm looking forward to see what he brings ultimately. The best thing about Joss, when you take on subject matter like this that could really come off stilted, is that he has a really good sense of humor, and that these characters are constantly sort of undercutting the seriousness of world domination. You know, they you know, poke at each other and they make fun of themselves and they laugh at each other. And I think that's a good balance to have so that the movie doesn't take itself too seriously. We know that we're inside of a comic book paradigm, and that's very much in fitting with how comic books are too. You know, that very wry sense of humor, and Joss understands that and has that and has infused all the characters with that.
When I read the script, I thought it was an enormous, brilliant achievement because Joss had managed to write a story with about maybe 10 leading characters and still keep the story together. So already there it was fantastic. But when you read the scripts, you don't see it because there's so much special effects and fantastic visual stuff coming added to it. But after a while, you get used to reading the Marvel scripts. You know that a lot of magic will be added later. So what you really read for is to see the characters, how they're working. He knows what he wants. He knows, and that's the most important thing for a director, to know when it's good, when it's not good, when it's truthful, when it's not truthful. And he knows that. And also he's extremely familiar with the universe he's working with.
The first one, there's a lot of stuff that I knew worked, and I felt like everybody had their moment. But there was also a lot of sort of a little reshaping just in terms of where scenes went. And the basic idea and the arc and the payoff was there. And in the second one, the job just got harder. It didn't get harder because, oh, I must recreate the first one. No, you know, everything that is set for you is good and bad. It's like, oh, I have all these restrictions, but I also have all these guidelines. I know these actors. I know how they play these parts. I know what their strengths are. I know what they're going to be looking for. But more importantly, you know, I know these characters. One of the things that James commented on, because James and I talked about it a lot, and James is very articulate, and he said, you know, I'm constantly referencing things either in a speech or emotionally that are not happening, that are not relevant. And he's like, and it really took me a second to incorporate that. And then I'm like, okay, that's the point. That's like he's doing math that emotionally that we don't see, and then suddenly he's angry about something, and suddenly he's obsessed with something else because his mind is everywhere. And so James really embraced that. And you know, and the thing about James, he was my first and only choice. Ultron is really, he has many fathers, but ultimately he's a creation of Tony Stark. And Stark and Banner worked together to create him, but Banner doesn't really get the cred because it's Tony's obsession, and the obsession is to solve the world. You know, he's seen it mess up. He's messed up himself so many times, and you know, he's gotten to a sort of higher ambition than he had before, which is just to make it better. He saw the alien army. He's like, that's not okay. He spent most of Iron Man 3 having anxiety attacks about it, and so he's got this obsession, which is to, you know, create a perfect peace. Cap and Tony start off fairly harmonious because they each sort of respect each other's place. Cap runs the team, Tony finances and designs everything, and they all have their own stuff going on the side. Usually the world's about to end somewhere else too, but their alliance, which is based on the idea that they recognize their differences and their different skill sets, is going to be put to the test. I have some of the best actors in film. Period. And they're in my superhero movie, and it's bizarre to me, and yet they're bringing everything, and I'm grateful for it.
For all of us at Marvel and for Joss, it's always about the characters. The fun of the Avengers film is not just the spectacle, it's not just the superpowers, it's having the characters interact with each other in a way that they can't in their own individual movies. So when the first Avengers worked and it became one of the biggest films of all time, you know, our first task was, now we're going to make a number of films between Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron with just Iron Man, just Thor, just Captain America, introduce some new characters, which became the Guardians of the Galaxy. And we need to remind the audience that they're just as cool separated as they are together. And clearly we call that phase 2, and here we are at the end of that. Phase 2 has worked, and worked even beyond our significant dreams. So as we started going into Age of Ultron, the fun was purely, now we get to put Captain America and Thor and Iron Man and Hulk and Hawkeye and Black Widow and Fury all together again for the first time since the first one. I think it's safe to say that the first Avengers was about them meeting each other for the first time. In Age of Ultron, they're getting to know each other for the first time. And there's so much material there for humor, of course, which is something that's very important to us at Marvel, and for conflict. And I think what Joss has done with Age of Ultron is pair up characters in unexpected ways. The fun of the comics is the shifting roster, is the notion that the Avengers begin as a certain roster of people, but over time, and certainly in the decades and decades since Avengers #1, that roster has changed dozens of times. And some characters go off into their own adventures, new characters come in. So for us, that was always part and parcel of the concept of the Avengers. So now that we have the opportunity to do another one, it was always the idea that we were going to mix up the teammates. He is an amazing actor. And while he can be funny and he can be witty, and is at all times, he can be self-reflexive in an amazing way. And he can continue to add new elements to Tony Stark. And he's not always the same. And Tony does evolve as a character over the course of the films. Iron Man 3 is a great example of having the biggest superhero in the world, and he's he's having a panic attack in a small town in the middle of nowhere in a slushy snow with a little kid going, "Are you okay, mister?" We love that. And I'm not sure we would take the character to those places if it wasn't for Robert, if it wasn't knowing that we have somebody who can do such a tremendous job, keep the humor going while getting very dark, keep the realism and emotion going while being very silly, for lack of a better term, in some moments. And that really frees us up to continue to take the character in these unexpected ways, because Robert will be there, and we're chasing him half the time in terms of where the character is going, what he's doing with the character. And it's been an unbelievable pleasure to see him design this character, build this character, embody this character, and then continue to surprise with this character. Joss was beginning to put together the character of Ultron, how he came about, what he wanted to do with the character. And he said to us, "I think it's got to be James Spader." And it was another moment we went, yes. There was nobody else on the list. There was nobody else that we went to. There was nobody else that we talked to. He might have been the first, I think he was the first new actor signed to the film. Because he's so unique, and he's got such an incredible, yes, he's got an amazing voice, number one, that is full of humor and darkness and emotion. And the key with Ultron, and Ultron in the books is a very unique robotic character, but it's a scary thing. There are a lot of robots in cinema today. There have been a lot of robots. There are a lot of franchises based on robots. There are new franchises coming down the line that are full of robots. We did not want a normal robot. We wanted Ultron, as he has been in the comics, to be borderline insane. The first film, we were based very much in, there were a few scenes that took place in some other countries, but it was very much based in and around Manhattan, the traditional home to the Avengers in the comic book. But it was important to us, because it's true in the comics as well, the Avengers are not an American superhero team. They are a team that has devoted itself to protecting the planet. And it was important in this film that we showcase that and that we travel around the world